Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Mile High Huddle SI. I am your host, Kim Becker, and joining me is publisher Chad Jensen. And Chad, a bona fide Broncos insider, hinted that if Vic Fangio loses the three remaining games, that imminent changes could be made in 2021. So, what do you think that the outlook for Vic Fangio is, and what could happen if the Broncos do slide to close the season?
I think if the Broncos, we got to define what slide really means. I don't think it would just be losing the three remaining games. I think it would have to be getting blown out in the three remaining games in order for Fangio's place in Denver to really be in danger. Because I think the Broncos have been locked in on Fangio for 2020 and 2021 the entire time. There's no guarantees. Again, like if he would have gone 2 and 14 this season, all bets are off. But I think they recognize some of the unique obstacles and outliers that he's had to face this year with the pandemic and the lack of OTAs and then all the injuries of every NFL team at this point in the season is really banged up. And there are several teams who have been inordinately affected by the injury bug thanks to the pandemic. But the Broncos are at the top of the list in terms of, the most injury plagued team this season thanks to the pandemic. And so it doesn't necessarily give Fangio a pass, but it is part of the equation that the front office has to consider. And I think at this stage, they've always been more inclined to say, hey, look, it's Fangio 2020, 2021. Now, if they do struggle in the final three games and, it's inconsistencies, disjointed performances, lack of intensity, there could be some changes, but I don't think it's going to be Vic Fangio. I think at worst, what you might see is the Denver Broncos perhaps move on from a special teams coordinator named Tom McMahon. Maybe if the offense does a complete 180 from what we saw in Carolina last week, in which Drew Lock just had that powerhouse performance, maybe Pat Shurmur gets handed his walking papers, but I doubt it. I think at this stage, the Broncos are kind of feeling like, hey, one of the reasons why we saw Drew finally blow the doors down in Carolina is he's had enough time on task with Shurmur now. I mean, imagine this. They lost 14 to 1,600 reps, Pat Shurmur and Drew Lock did together, because of the OTAs and preseason being canceled. So factoring in all those reps, basically what they had to do is go through those reps, getting to know each other on the fly in live bullet situations. And unfortunately, they were in high stakes situations, right? These games counted. But what you're seeing now from the offense is probably about what you would have seen if they would have had OTAs in preseason. Somewhere toward the end of the first quarter of the season, you would have seen Drew and Shurmur starting to share a brain and starting to kind of jive and flow together. Instead, because of just the weirdness of this season, it's been the final quarter of the season. So the Broncos don't want to have to put another offensive coordinator into this equation and put Drew Lock, risk delaying Drew Lock's development any more than they already have by firing last year's offensive coordinator, Rich Scangarello, to bring in Shurmur. So at worst, I could see maybe Tom McMahon getting handed his walking papers, maybe Shurmur. But to be honest with you, I don't think so. I think this is a coaching staff that, for the most part, even if the Broncos kind of maybe they win one of the remaining three, but even if they do go 0-3, I don't think the Broncos are looking to fire Vic Fangio. I think they want to give him and his staff and Drew Lock the full 2020 calendar, OTAs, training camp, preseason, and one last hurrah, because it's also 2021, John Elway's final year of his contract. So it's definitely going to be kind of a make or break season. And all of the building blocks have led to this. Now's not the time to pull the parachute.
Now, I know it's been a long 5 years for Broncos country trying to get a team that's really going to be solid and give us the results that we're all looking for. But like you always say, Chad, you got to let it breathe, right? You got to let this team kind of get going here, especially with Drew Lock. And it is such a bummer that it seems like now, finally, at the end of the season, he's gotten the chemistry going with Pat Shurmur. But hey, it's 2020, right? Like, this is the theme of the year here.
Well, and also, Kim, it's like they wandered the QB desert for so long,
Yeah.
and finally they found a guy that has so many of the tools that you look for. And it's similar with just the overall team approach. They've wandered the winning desert, let's just say, for the last few years, but they've drafted well for the last 3 years. They've made several really key free agent acquisitions, and 2020 just served them up the craziest combination of outliers. And so they've put in all that work. They've made all the sacrifices. They made all the right decisions. Don't get off that now. Don't change that. Don't turn course now because of, this unique season. Now, if it would have been a regular 2020 calendar, NFL calendar, and you had OTAs and you had the preseason and you weren't bitten as badly as you were by the injury bug, all right, and Vic Fangio rolls into 2021 on the heels of, say, a 6-10 season, maybe it's more of a question. But because of that, I think they're inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt and go all in once again in 2021.
I agree. Hopefully, having the off season, a normal off season next summer, crossing our fingers, will definitely kill that injury bug, because I think that's a huge factor as well. But all things to think about, Chad. I hate to say that we only have 3 more games left, but that is the truth of the matter. So hopefully they go in the direction that we want to see. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim.